Are we back? We back. Yes, indeedy, knock the frosty slush off the anime derby. We're finally entering the new season, and not a moment too soon. I took a break from the derby for spring due to personal conflicts, although don't fret, you will see videos on the spring season. They'll just be framed from a post-mortem stance. And I'm starting up the summer derby with gusto, and also a slight change in format. To facilitate getting these out in a timely fashion, I'm killing the live segments and shifting the show to an all-voiceover format, much like how I did things for my older reviews in the past. It's just easier, faster, and while I put my face on camera to affect a more polished professional image, I realize now that's just not necessary. And in some ways, I think it inhibits the show. Let's just keep shit simple, shall we? Now then, if you're new to the derby, here's how it works. Each round I'll be running down the new simulcasted, sometimes fan-subbed anime coming straight from Japan to the Western world, spoiler-free, don't freak out, discussing them, ranking them, and dropping the worst entries week after week until we end up with a top 10 at the finish line. To make the ranking easier, I break each block of episodes I digest into 3 brackets. Green, which means I want to see more, yellow, which means I could care less if I saw more of the show or not, and red, which means I actively want to stop watching it and or most likely set the show on fire and watch it burn to the ground slowly. Now, summer is a hefty season this year, for some reason, presenting us with a bulky 22 shows, of which I've narrowed down to the creamiest 18 of the crop, and unlike winter, I'll be dropping 2 shows each round instead of 1. 18 is the absolute max I can cover for this kind of thing. You'll know why when you see the scrunched up leaderboard at the end. We'll get to what anime I'm covering in just a moment, but since we've got a whole new slate, a rather large one, I should quickly run over what I'm not covering. The derby only covers full 20-minute length television series that are fresh starting IP, so that means no shorts or web series like the examples listed here, although if I were to recommend something from this list, Senyu, which started in the winter season of this year, is wacky, bite-sized fun and sports a second season this summer, and Yami Shibai Ghost Stories is a collection of, well, ghost stories. Short and spooky, might be worth the 5 minutes every week. Those are both on Crunchyroll. Now, I don't cover continuations, second seasons, prequels, spin-offs, etc. of previously aired shows, such as all the things listed here, plus probably some more stuff I ran out of room for. Now, hypothetically, I would cover complete reboots or radically reinvented spin-offs, such as the Unlimited Hyobu Kyosuke from the near past, or that Sailor Moon reboot in the near future, but the line is drawn at the anime in question being standalone. We start fresh with every season, which also means if there was anything to be covered during the summer derby that goes over 13 episodes or gets renewed later for another season, I stop covering it when fall starts. I may do a check-back style thing if it's a show I'm still watching and loving, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Anyway, recommendations from the franchise pile here for those of you who like to jump into the middle of things, I guess. Genshiken's second season, which is not actually the second season, but the third or something like that. It's complicated. Well, anyway, it's been talked up a good deal. Plenty of people like Genshiken to begin with, and the perennially enjoyable cutie comedy The World God Only Knows also has a third season that I heard got off to a rocky start in attempting to explain away a lot of things that happened off screen, but it's going to cover what I think fans call the best part of the story, the Goddesses arc, so hey, that could be worth a look too. Both are available on Crunchyroll. Whew. Now, I mentioned earlier that the derby only covers 18 of the 22 new IP series. They'll be covered in depth because I can't really do any more than that. But I wanted to briefly touch on the 4 I've preemptively booted and why. The short answer is that I watched the first episode of all 22 and then pre-dropped the ones that I would classify as red bracket and the least interesting to discuss of their red bracket cousins. Anyway, super quickly, here's the Wall of Shame. Gifu Dodo, which is about 2 macho samurai buddies and their legend or something. It's ugly, poorly animated, poorly written, and kind of culturally impenetrable for a Western audience. I was baffled, and it made my head hurt, so that shit's on Crunchyroll. Brothers Conflict, which is about a young heroine who is adopted into a family of 13 brothers, who it turns out all want to fuck her. The premise itself is pretty squicky, but the terrible animation, confusing, over-expositional writing, and an unexplained, uncute, and super annoying talking flying squirrel make it absolutely unwatchable. That shit's on Funimation. Chronicles of the Going Home Club, which is a dumb high school comedy series based off yet another one of those 4-panel gag comics. It's the try-hardiest thing where non sequitur and overreaction is supposed to be the joke. None of the characters are original, likable, or really at all funny, so shrill and pointless, that shit's on Crunchyroll. Finally, Hyperdimension Neptunia, which is the story of the Wii/Xbox 360/PS3 console war, and the role of PC gaming and all of that. Except the four are personified as moe girls in a fantasy world. And I feel like I don't have to explain why this is getting dropped, but yeah. Could be funny bad, but it's just generic bad. Gaudy, stupid, and weirdly super complicated with dumb fantasy world mechanics details everywhere. Overstuffed to such a degree you can't even draw parallels to the actual console war. It just comes off as generic pandering otaku crapola, so that shit's on Funimation. Okay, with all that squared away, let's get right down to it. First show on the slate is Dog and Scissors. What an odd title. I wonder what it's about. You've gotta be fucking kidding me. What a way to start. Well, as it turns out, Dog and Scissors is the story of a young lad who loves to read books. All day and all night, he just reads, and his favorite author, his muse, the woman whose novels he's positively obsessed with, is releasing her 7th and final book in her Deadly Sins series. So he's really super excited and high on life, until he's caught at the wrong place, wrong time, and gets shot in the head trying to protect a woman in a diner during a robbery. The woman herself barely notices the gesture, pretty much just lets him die for no reason. This, mind you, is supposed to be hilarious. But the boy fights back from the brink of oblivion, dragging his spirit back to the living world to reside in, unexpectedly, the body of a fluffy dachshund. He stays in a pet store for a while before being adopted by a woman who can hear him speaking telepathically, as no other humans can, so she takes him home to kill him with a pair of scissors. Because the fact that he's a talking dog and she can hear him in her head wherever she goes annoys her, so she can't focus on her writing. Therefore, the only option available to her is to stab him through the heart with a pair of scissors. This, mind you, is supposed to be hilarious. As you may have already guessed, the woman turns out to be his favorite author, and after temporarily deciding not to goddamn murder a puppy, she lets him into her personal library so he can read all the books he wants. Which he instantly decides makes it okay that he's now a person in the body of a dog, completely forgetting any kind of human emotion or desire, like wanting to see his family, or come to terms with the fact that everybody thinks he's dead, or anything apart from comical hysterics at how unladylike his favorite writer/new master is, and how scary it is that she keeps threatening to kill him, and of course all of this is supposed to be high-fucking-hilarious. So this is really awful. It's really awful. Never mind the fact that we're supposed to find the threat of physical harm to a cute puppy funny, repeatedly, and never mind the fact that the characters are so ludicrously far removed from humanity in what is kind of a gruesome premise. All the more so because this series looks to be aiming for a hybrid murder mystery and wacky comedy theme, two things that's very hard to combine successfully without being tacky. The thing is, the animation is dumpy, the comedy is dreadfully unfunny, the writing's bad, and while the premise at its core isn't terrible, the execution and the details thereof definitely are. I'm fairly positive a romance is supposed to blossom between dog and master prior to him somehow changing back, and their relationship, even at this early stage, is vaguely dommy-subby bondage fetishy, if you read between the lines. So that means the books it was based on are probably the artist's self-insert fanfic, which I have no interest in reading or watching, especially when the writing and the animation are this bad. Definite red flag on the field here. This is complete garbage. Can't we have something that makes me feel good and warm and fuzzy inside? Well, I definitely feel warm and fuzzy. I'm sorry, where were we? Oh, right, Free Iwatobi Swimming Club. Formerly known to Tumblr and various forum threads as #SwimmingAnime. Now, this show doesn't have much of a plot, but it has a pretty amusing story behind it, I guess you could say, so let's talk about that first. Back in the middle of the winter season, esteemed animation studio Kyoto Animation, which was producing Tamako Market at the time, aired a 30-second animation demo for a fake show demonstrating what their spin-off house, full of up-and-coming young animators, known as Animation Do, was capable of. They do this sometimes. In fact, they do this fairly often, and the promos are never really indicative of a real show that's going to exist. It's just showing off the B team, so to speak. Well, the internet exploded. Fujoshi were so enthralled with the prospect of a meticulously animated, well-directed KyoAni quality fanservice show for them, since guys get that kind of thing every season, that they obsessed over the 30-second clip and pleaded for it to be a reality. But that wasn't the interesting part. Now that part makes sense. The interesting part was the reaction from the darkest, nastiest strains of male otakudom. It was an emphatic mocking of the swimming anime petitioning, with the male KyoAni fandom insisting that KyoAni's high-end output was for them only, and that quote-unquote gay stuff would never be produced because women weren't true fans like they were. They didn't buy things like they did. They didn't have the taste to understand that their man-service narratives were garbage and not deserving of KyoAni's attention, etc., etc. It got a little bit ugly. Then, a couple months later, bam! Free Iwatobi Swimming Club was announced, fangirls fainted in glee, and the KyoAni male base fucking lost it. They bitched at KyoAni for betraying them, they cursed the females for ruining their moe monopoly, and the fallout was just such a thing of beauty to behold when the show did turn out to be KyoAni tier of production, even better, some have claimed. Almost like the staff were sort of inspired by the change of pace instead of circling the same hamster wheel that made Tamako Market so tepid and frankly unsuccessful. There's not much to say about the story just one episode in. It's about 4 high school boys who were best friends when they were little but have grown apart some in high school and hope to grow closer together by forming a swim team. But 2 of the boys, protagonist Haru, who's so in love with the water he can barely stand to be out of it, or closed, for very long, and Rin, who has devilish shark teeth and a massive chip on his shoulder about being second best, are rivals, and they're gonna be on rival teams, oh no! Now, just because the righteous beatdown and exposing of misogyny this show's development produced was a beautiful, beautiful thing, doesn't mean I should have a double standard about the content itself. It may be cheesecake aimed at ladies, or beefcake, I guess, but it's still, at basest pitch, a fanservice show meant to tease and please and sell merchandise, which is perhaps a sleazy pursuit, at least a simple one, certainly the most potent poison seeping through the anime industry's veins right now. As a critic, I try not to have a bias toward what gender pander material happens to be pandering to. You may notice I swatted down brothers' conflict at the top of the video. I have no patience for boring crap, my gender notwithstanding, and I'll happily indulge male-aimed fanservice shows if they're well-written and not wholly morally repulsive. I'm not even that picky about super female-positive representation therein. Chobits is a magical girlfriend show with some mildly sexist, or at very least, old-fashioned chivalric subtext laced throughout it, and it's one of my favorite anime. And then there's Sword Art Online, a consistently sexist, self-insert male nerd fantasy. I was perfectly fine with it and entertained by it until the 2nd season, where it did finally cross that tremulous line into wholly morally repulsive. Now, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I really do have to hammer this in, because the internet is the internet, and I'm going to get needled for saying that Free is absolutely great, you should totally watch it, and a lot of it does have to do with the show's sexuality. To get the obvious out of the way, it looks great, and even if the character designs are too young or feminine and the abs too crazy detailed for your liking, aka me, the animation is impressive here and the presentation is attractive by multiple definitions. But more important is the content, and this show, far from being boring or stereotypical, is funny and campy while still being tongue-in-cheek and polished. It has a great sense of humor, a combo of self-aware absurdism and homoerotic subtext that's gleeful and refreshing, and the characters are likable, pretty simple without being paint-by-numbers paper cutouts. Whether you find it sexy, funny, or just a pleasant, pretty experience, there's nothing squicky or uncomfortable about this. It's just a very happy, open, entertaining experience, so I say let there be man service. Let it flow freely and flapping in the breeze, or something. Perhaps we should move on. From the folks who brought you Working, or Wagneria as it was known in the US for more effective Googling, comes Servant X Service, which I assure you only sounds like the name of a hentai. It is sadly not nearly as entertaining as its title suggests. Now, the service in Servant X Service stands for public service, and a public servant, i.e. government workers and social servants, i.e. those people who run you through the DMV, i.e. not a very interesting subject for an anime, but they try. They don't necessarily succeed, but they try. Let's back up a little. Just as Wagneria followed the daily grind of the quirky servers and cooks in a family diner, Servantech service follows the daily grind of quirky social service employees like busty, nerve-riddled Lucy, flirty, lazy Utaka, shy, Stepford-esque Saya, etc., etc., etc. There's no